Folks, what is up? This is Michael, back from a few days off. Oh, it was nice to have some time off, recharge my batteries. I'm back to the grind. I hope you guys are doing well. Hope your week is going good. It's only Tuesday. It's going to be like one of those weeks that just creeps by. I can feel it, but hopefully it'll pick back up. Anyways, without further ado, the answer to the previous trivia question, which was a good trivia question. Man, we had some good trivia questions last week, was Camp David, which is essentially a retreat. It's a country retreat, and a very nice one at that. That's designated exclusively for the President of the United States of America. It is technically a military institution. It is located in the mountains of Frederick County. I have been to Frederick County, Maryland. It's just about 60 miles northwest of Washington, D.C. It's used by the President of the United States and his family for weekend getaways of sorts when it's not necessarily reasonable for the president to get too far out of the D.C. area in moments of crisis or where he needs to be near D.C., but he still needs to get away. Nonetheless, Camp David serves just that purpose. It has also historically been used for cabinet member meetings and as a site host of for international leaders to meet for discussions, peace talks, summit events, international diplomacy needs. Anything along those lines to maintain international and diplomatic relations. Just a few of the more well-known people who have historically visited Camp David include Winston Churchill, going back to the late 30s, early 40s, Margaret Thatcher, Egyptian President Anwar al-Sadat, and Israeli Prime Minister Menachem Begin. I'm sure I'm pronouncing all of this wrong and just butchering this completely, but that was in reference to the 1970s Camp David Accord meetings that they had, those two international leaders had with President Jimmy Carter. Very famous Accord meetings where peace agreements were met. That was, of course, the focus of the trivia question. Tony Blair has been to Camp David. Vladimir Putin has been to Camp David. I don't think he's going to get another invite anytime soon. Just FYI, I don't think that's going to happen. Originally, Camp David was built as a camp for federal government agents and their families by what was known as the Works Progress Administration. It was constructed in 1935, or its construction began in 1935, was completed 3 years later, just in time, coincidentally, for World War II. How about that as a nice getaway when your country is going through a world war? It's nice for the president to have a getaway like Camp David as its retreat. Speaking of which, Franklin Delano Roosevelt officially converted it to a presidential retreat at that time and renamed it Shangri-La. And the grounds received its Camp David official name in 1953 from President Dwight Eisenhower in honor of his father and grandson, who both were named David. There's very famous pictures of his grandson walking around Camp David. That's where the retreat and the grounds got its name from. The Park Service, as you can imagine, does not indicate the location of Camp David in any way, shape, or form due to privacy and obvious national security concerns. They're not going to put that on a map anywhere. Although in today's day and age, as you can imagine, you can easily find it in Google Earth, Google Maps. It's public information through accessible satellite images. So I don't recommend that you go driving up looking for Camp David. I remember a famous 60 Minutes interview where Andy Rooney, of all people, just happened to, he was like, wow, we're going to go see what Camp David looks like. And he drove up on the gates of Camp David and was immediately ambushed by Marine soldiers, which obviously it's heavily guarded and protected. So a couple of cool geek factoids about Camp David. Check this out. These are pretty cool facts. Ronald Reagan visited the retreat more than any other president, and he restored the nature trails that Nixon had paved over so he could ride his horses. Of course, Ronald Reagan, as you remember, loved horses. He owned many of them, had a ranch out in California, but he redesigned some of the paved trails at Camp David so he could ride his horses out there on his getaways with Nancy. George H.W. Bush's daughter Dorothy was married at Camp David in 1992, and that was the very first wedding ever held at Camp David. Bill Clinton spent every Thanksgiving there was during his 8 years as president at Camp David with his family, used that as a Thanksgiving getaway. John F. Kennedy and his family often enjoyed riding, golf, and other recreational activities there's plenty of documentation of Kennedy's and his family with his daughter and his son and Jacqueline spending it at Camp David. Jimmy Carter was going to close it. This is before the Camp David Accords in the 1970s. He was going to close Camp David because of costs. Remember, this was a very hard economic time, and he was just going to close it. But he spent one weekend out there, and he decided, no, this place is very special. I'm going to keep it open. Each president, as you can imagine, has traditionally revised the grounds in some way. Each presidency comes out there and goes, I want a jacuzzi over here. I want a putting green over here. I want an extra large bed in there and so forth to accommodate their desires and their getaway. So that's Camp David. Pretty cool place to research. All right, folks, let's keep the week going, shall we, with a brand new trivia question. These are cool. This is going to be another cool week for trivia questions, folks. Check this out. This is awesome. Listen very carefully to how this is phrased for September 20th on this day. In 1881, Chester Arthur joins Rutherford Hayes and James Garfield, in that order, becoming the third person to do this during the same calendar year. Think about those people and who they are, what they did. Piece it together, folks. You guys are smart. You can do that. I'll see you guys later. Peace out.